No! Sarah! Sarah! Wake up, please! Please don't leave me! Wake up! Gasps, then falls silent.
The windshield was gone. Rain slashed across Ethan's face as he dragged himself through broken glass. And then he heard it. The wet, choking sound his wife was making inside the crushed car. Claire was still alive, pinned under the dashboard, blood filling one corner of her mouth. Her eyes wide with the kind of terror that only comes when death is close enough to touch. If stories like this hit you in the chest, subscribe, like the video, and stay with me until the end, because this one doesn't let go. Claire, Claire, look at me. I'm here. I'm here. His knees sank into mud beside the passenger door. The sedan lay twisted against a tree, steam hissing from the hood, one tire still spinning in the dark like the night hadn't understood what it had done. Claire tried to lift her hand. She couldn't. Ethan reached through the shattered frame and held it for her. Her fingers were freezing. "No, no, no, don't do this," he said, his voice cracking so hard it barely sounded human. "The ambulance is coming. Just stay with me." She looked at him the way people do when they know the truth and you don't. Then she whispered, barely louder than the rain, "It wasn't an accident." Ethan stopped breathing. Her chest hitched. She pulled him closer with surprising strength, blood on her lips, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "Our son," she said. His whole body went still. "What?" "Our son is alive." The world made no sense for a full second. Not the road, not the car, not the blood. Not the 6 years since they'd buried a baby-sized coffin in a cemetery on the edge of town. Claire swallowed hard, like the words themselves were cutting her from inside. "Nathan took him." Ethan stared at her. Nathan. His younger brother. The man who held Ethan up at the funeral. The man who paid for the flowers. The man who cried with them. Claire tried to say more, but pain tore through her. Her eyes rolled shut. Ethan shook her, panicking now, begging, crying, breaking right there in the mud. "Claire, no. No, you don't get to say that and leave me. Open your eyes. Tell me where he is. Claire!" Her lashes fluttered. "One more thing," she breathed. He bent close enough to feel her last warmth. "In my coat pocket. Phone." Then her body softened. Not all at once. That was the worst part. It was slow. A tiny surrender. A breath that didn't come back. And Ethan, kneeling in shattered glass and rainwater, realized the love of his life had died with his hand in hers and a secret in her mouth that had just torn his entire life in half. By the time the sirens arrived, Nathan was already there. He came racing through the rain in jeans and a dark jacket, face pale, shouting Ethan's name. Ethan had no memory of calling him, but somebody must have. Maybe the truck driver who'd found them. Maybe one of the first responders. It didn't matter. Nathan grabbed Ethan by the shoulders. "Oh my God, Ethan, where's Claire?" Ethan looked at him. Really looked. At the raindrops on his lashes. At the trembling mouth. At the perfect performance of a grieving brother who might have just murdered his own sister-in-law. "She's gone," Ethan said. Nathan closed his eyes and bowed his head. For anyone else, it would have looked like heartbreak. To Ethan, it looked like relief. At the hospital, they cleaned the blood from Ethan's face and asked him the usual questions. Speed, seatbelt, alcohol. Had Claire seemed distracted? Had they argued? That last one landed. Because yes, they had argued. Not screaming, not cruel. worse. Tired. The kind of argument married people have when love is still there, but grief has lived in the walls so long it knows where everything is. Claire had been distant for weeks, hiding her phone, leaving the room to answer calls, jumpy whenever Nathan's name came up. And earlier that night, when Ethan asked if she was seeing someone, she slapped him. Not hard, but hard enough to leave both of them shocked. "I am trying to protect this family," she'd said. Ethan had laughed, bitter and stupid. "What family, Claire? We buried our family 6 years ago." He wanted those words back before the officer finished writing them down. When he was finally alone, Ethan remembered her last whisper. Coat pocket. Her coat had been cut off in the ER. He found it in a plastic evidence bag. Inside the pocket was a phone he'd never seen before. Not Claire's regular phone, a cheap burner. His pulse began to hammer. The screen lit up. No password. There were only 3 things on it: a photo, a voice memo, and one unsent message addressed to Ethan. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped it. The photo came first. A little boy, maybe 6, standing at a school fair in a paper crown, grinning with a gap between his teeth. Dark hair, gray-blue eyes. Ethan sat down so suddenly the chair scraped against the floor. Those were Claire's eyes. And his smile. No. No, that was impossible. He opened the voice memo. Claire's voice filled the tiny speaker, whispering fast, like she was terrified someone would hear. "If you're listening to this, something went wrong. Ethan, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I found out 3 weeks ago that our baby didn't die that night." Ethan gripped the edges of the chair until his knuckles went white. "I didn't tell you because I needed proof first, and because Nathan threatened me. He said if I said anything before I had everything, you'd disappear too." Ethan's stomach turned. "In St. Mary's, after the fire alarm and the power loss, there was chaos. They told me our baby went into distress. Nathan came in before the doctor did. He had papers. He said he was helping. Ethan, I was drugged. I signed things I don't remember. The nurse who contacted me said Nathan paid Dr. Brenner to list the baby as deceased and move him through a private adoption network." Ethan couldn't blink. "He's alive. His name is Jonah now. I think the family who has him doesn't know. I think they love him. I think they were lied to just like we were." Claire's breathing on the recording turned ragged. "I was meeting the nurse tonight. She gave me copies. Nathan must have found out. If anything happens to me, go to the blue locker at Greyhound Station. Key is taped under the dresser in my studio. Ethan," her voice broke, "I let you bury an empty coffin." He covered his mouth. On the recording, Claire was crying now, and hearing her cry after hearing her die did something to him no ambulance or prayer could fix. "I wanted to tell you 100 times, every night, but you were finally smiling again, just a little. And I was so afraid that hope would destroy you if I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I let you hate me instead." The memo ended. Ethan sat in silence. His brother had stolen his son. His wife had carried that truth alone until it crushed her. And the boy in the picture, Jonah, was out there somewhere, calling strangers Mom and Dad, while Claire lay dead in a morgue drawer downstairs. There are moments when grief makes a man collapse,
and there are moments when grief makes him dangerous. The funeral was 3 days later. Nathan organized everything. Of course he did. The flowers were white roses because Claire loved them. The church was full because Nathan made sure the whole town knew Ethan's wife had died in a terrible accident and Ethan needed support. He stood near the casket, greeting people with a solemn face and a hand on his heart, like grief had elected him mayor. Ethan watched from the front pew, hollowed out. Then Nathan walked to the podium. He spoke softly, perfectly. Claire was light, he said, even in her darker seasons. Ethan's jaw clenched. She carried pain privately, too privately. Sometimes the people we love are fighting battles we don't see. Murmurs moved through the church. Ethan looked up. Nathan lowered his head as if he hated saying what came next. I know my brother blames himself.
But the truth is, Claire had been struggling. She was distracted lately, emotional. And on the night of the accident, they fought. A cold wave moved through Ethan's body. Nathan had just turned the room with one sentence. Not enough to accuse, just enough to poison. At the back, Ethan heard whispers. Poor Claire. Poor Nathan. Poor Ethan, too, but in that careful, pitying way people use when they think you might have helped ruin your own life. Then Nathan looked directly at him and said, She deserved peace. That did it. Ethan stood so fast the pew slammed. You liar! Gasps. Nathan stepped back from the podium, eyes widening with saintly hurt. Ethan! You don't say her name, Ethan snapped, moving down the aisle. You don't get to stand over her coffin and say her name. People rose. Hands reached for him. Nathan's voice came soft again, almost trembling. He's in shock. Please. Ethan lunged. 3 men grabbed him before he reached the altar. He fought like a wounded animal, not because he thought he could kill Nathan there, but because Nathan wanted calm, and Ethan wanted the whole room to hear violence. You took him! Ethan shouted. You took my son! The church fell dead silent. Nathan froze only for a fraction of a second. Then he looked around at the crowd, devastated. Oh God, he said quietly. He's talking about the baby. That was the moment Ethan realized how deep this went. Nathan didn't panic. He pivoted. He turned Ethan's truth into madness. By sunset, half the town believed Ethan had finally broken under old grief and new loss. By morning, someone had spray-painted, "Get help," on his garage door. But Claire had left directions. That night, Ethan went to the bus station. The key was exactly where she said it would be, taped beneath the back corner of her paint-stained dresser. He found it with shaking fingers, drove across town, and opened locker 214. Inside was a yellow envelope, a hospital bracelet, copies of medical forms, and a flash drive. The bracelet nearly stopped his heart. Baby boy Carter. Weight, 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Mother, Claire Carter. Time of birth, 2:11 a.m. He turned it over. A second label had been stuck on top and then peeled away so badly the glue remained. He stared at the torn residue for a long time. Because once you know you've been lied to, even glue starts telling stories. The forms were worse. One death certificate with a doctor's signature. One transfer authorization signed by Claire with a date and time stamped while she was still under sedation. And one payment ledger from a shell charity Nathan had founded years later, Children First Outreach, linked to St. Mary's through Emergency Family Services. The flash drive contained surveillance clips from the maternity ward hallway. Most were corrupted. One worked. The timestamp flickered. Nurses running. A power surge. Smoke alarm lights flashing. And then Nathan, younger but unmistakable, wheeling a bassinet through a side exit marked "Authorized Staff Only." Ethan stopped the video, pressed play, stopped it again. There it was. Not proof of adoption, not proof of payment, but proof Nathan had the baby. Proof that his brother had been inside the machine when it moved. And then Ethan heard a voice behind him. "You shouldn't be here." He turned so fast he nearly dropped the drive. A woman stood in the doorway of the locker room, maybe late 50s, damp hair tucked under a hood, eyes sharp and frightened. "I'm Rosa," she said. "I was the night nurse." Ethan's throat tightened. "You contacted Claire?" She nodded. "I should have spoken years ago." He stepped toward her. "Then do it now." Rosa looked over her shoulder like the walls might report her. "I didn't know the baby was being taken to be sold. Nathan told us there had been a custody issue. Wealthy relatives. Emergency legal transfer. Dr. Brenner signed off. I believed it until months later when I saw cash in his office and your son's file disappear." Ethan felt sick. Why wait 6 years? Rosa's face crumpled with old shame. "Because I have a son too." Nathan found that out very quickly. Ethan closed his eyes. Everybody had been afraid of Nathan. Everybody except Claire in the end. Rosa handed him a folded paper. "School registration. I shouldn't have this either. Claire got it from the agency broker before he vanished. Your son lives under the name Jonah Ward." The address was only 15 minutes away. For one wild second, Ethan was already in the car, already at the house, already on the porch demanding his child back. Then Rosa grabbed his wrist. "If the people raising him are innocent, don't destroy that boy to ease your pain." He looked at her, breathing hard. She was right. That made it worse. The Ward house sat at the end of a tree-lined street with chalk drawings on the driveway and a bicycle tipped over near the mailbox. It didn't look like the home of monsters. It looked like the home Claire would have wanted for any child. Warm, safe, loud with ordinary life. Ethan stayed across the street in his truck for nearly an hour. Then the front door opened. A boy ran out in red sneakers, chasing a paper airplane. Ethan forgot how to breathe for the second time that week. Jonah was smaller than he imagined. Freckles across the nose, skinny knees, hair that refused to lie flat, just like Ethan's did when he was a kid. He laughed when the airplane dipped into a bush, and the sound hit Ethan so hard he had to grip the steering wheel to keep from falling apart. A woman came out behind him. "Jonah, not in the road!" Her voice carried love. Real love. Not borrowed. Not fake. Jonah turned and shouted, "Just one more!" Then he saw Ethan's truck. He waved. Just a simple child's wave to a stranger. Ethan burst into tears. Not loud. Just the kind that slide out when the body can't contain what the heart has been hit with. He didn't approach the house that day, or the next. Instead, he watched, learned, and broke a little more every time he did. Jonah loved dinosaurs, hated crusts, took piano on Thursdays, fell asleep in the back seat with his mouth open after soccer practice. And every time Ethan considered knocking on the door, one question stopped him cold. What if Jonah was happy? Then Nathan made the first move. Ethan came home one night to find his garage ransacked and the yellow envelope gone. On the workbench, written in black marker across a torn piece of cardboard, were 6 words. "You should have died with her." This time, Ethan went straight to the sheriff. Sheriff Doyle read the note, sighed, and leaned back in his chair. "You've had a hard week, Ethan." Ethan stared at him. "That's all you've got?" "I've got a grieving man seeing enemies everywhere." "You knew Nathan was at that hospital." Doyle's eyes cooled. "Careful." Ethan slapped the hospital bracelet onto the desk. The sheriff barely looked at it. That told Ethan everything. When he left the station, Nathan was waiting beside his black SUV across the street. Sunset painted the town gold, and Nathan stood in it like he owned even the light. "You should stop," Nathan said. Ethan walked toward him. "Why?" Nathan's mouth twitched. "Because Claire did." Ethan swung before he could think. Nathan took the punch, staggered, then smiled through the split in his lip. That smile was pure evil because it was private. No audience, no performance, just truth. "You really want to know what happened?" Nathan said, wiping blood with his thumb. "Dad was dying. The business was drowning. You were useless with grief, and Claire was sedated. A couple came through the agency with money. A lot of money. I solved a problem." Ethan lunged again, but Nathan stepped back. "The baby would have had a better life than with 2 broken people who spent every night blaming each other." Ethan's voice came out low and ruined. "He was my son." Nathan shrugged. "And now he's not." The world narrowed. Ethan would have killed him right there if another car hadn't turned onto the street. Nathan's pleasant face came back in a blink. He buttoned his jacket, leaned in, and whispered, "Go near the Ward family, and I'll make sure they believe you're dangerous. You'll never get within 10 feet of the boy." Then he got into the SUV and drove away. Ethan stood alone, hands shaking, finally understanding the shape of the monster he'd grown up beside. The next humiliation came fast. At a community fundraiser Nathan hosted for the new children's wing, because of course the man trafficking one child would put his name on a building for sick ones, security footage suddenly leaked online, showing Ethan sitting outside the Ward house in his truck for 3 separate days. The caption said Claire's unstable widower had become obsessed with a local family. By noon, the Wards had filed for a temporary protective order. Ethan wasn't even allowed on their street. That night, he listened to Claire's voice memo again in the dark. Not the whole thing, just the part where she said, "I let you bury an empty coffin." He put the phone against his forehead and sobbed so hard he almost threw up. Then the voicemail played one sound he hadn't noticed before. At the very end, after Claire stopped speaking, there was a chime. A piano melody. 3 notes. He sat up. He knew that melody. It was the startup sound from the donor presentation Nathan's charity used at public events. Claire hadn't recorded that memo at home. She'd recorded it inside Nathan's office, which meant there might be more there than threats. The next morning, Ethan broke into his brother's office. Not elegantly, not like in movies. He pried a side window open with a tire iron, cut his hand on the frame, tripped the first motion sensor, and had less than 4 minutes before private security arrived. Nathan's desk was spotless. Too spotless. Ethan tore through drawers, yanked binders, dumped cabinets, and found nothing. Then he saw the family photo on the shelf. Nathan never kept family photos. He grabbed it. The frame was heavier than it should have been.
The back panel popped loose. Inside was an SD card. Ethan ran. Security caught only the taillights of his truck. On the card were scanned ledgers, agency messages, off-book transfers, and one video file titled, "Do Not Keep." His hands turned numb opening it. The footage showed Claire in Nathan's office, recorded from a hidden corner camera. She was furious, standing across from Nathan's desk, eyes red, voice shaking.
"I know where he is." Nathan stayed seated. "Then you know he's safe." "You sold our baby." "I placed him." Claire slapped the desk so hard a pen rolled off. "You stole him!" Nathan leaned forward. "And if I hadn't, you and Ethan would have ruined him. I gave him a clean life." Claire looked like she might stab him with her bare hands. "I'm telling Ethan." "No," Nathan said. "You're not." He opened a drawer, took out a folder, dropped photographs across the desk. Ethan froze. The photos were of him, leaving bars years ago, sleeping in his truck after Claire asked for space. One image of him screaming in a parking lot after their son's funeral, fists bleeding from punching brick. Nathan's voice was calm. "You tell him without airtight proof. I give these to the court and to the wards. I tell them a violent alcoholic is claiming their son. And if Ethan keeps pushing, accidents happen." Claire went white. "You'd kill your own brother?" Nathan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The video ended. Ethan sat in silence for a long time after that. Claire hadn't hidden the truth because she didn't trust him. She'd hidden it because she loved him enough to carry the poison alone until she could beat Nathan clean. And it had killed her. This time, Ethan didn't go to the police. He went to the wards. Not to the house. To the mother's workplace, a bookstore cafe downtown, where there were witnesses, light, and no place for lies to feel brave. Her name was Emily Ward. She recognized him instantly. Fear crossed her face. Then anger. "You need to leave." "I would," Ethan said, setting the SD card on the table between them. "If that boy weren't my son." She went still. "I'm not here to take him from you," Ethan said. "I'm here because somebody lied to both of us." Emily stared at him, then at the card. Her voice lowered. "My husband and I adopted Jonah through St. Mary's emergency placement program. We were told his birth parents died." Ethan shut his eyes for 1 second. 2 people destroyed. Different years, same lie. "Watch it," he said. She did. Not there. She took the card with trembling hands and left early. That night, her husband called. Then the next morning, they both met Ethan in a church office with a lawyer present because none of them trusted the world anymore. They watched the video together. Emily cried first. Her husband, Mark, cried second. Ethan didn't cry at all. He'd gone somewhere colder by then. Mark covered his face. "We didn't know." "I know," Ethan said. That was the mercy none of them deserved, but all of them needed. Emily whispered, "He's 6. He thinks we're his whole story." Ethan looked at the floor. "Right now, you are." No one spoke for a long time. Then Mark asked, "What do you want?" Ethan thought of Claire dying in rain and broken glass. He thought of Jonah waving at a stranger from the driveway. He thought of Nathan's smile. "I want the truth," he said. "And then I want my son to meet me in a world where monsters don't get the microphone." The showdown came at the hospital fundraiser that Saturday night. Nathan stood on stage in a tailored suit beneath a giant banner with his name on it, smiling for cameras, thanking donors, talking about children and hope and community. Ethan waited until the applause peaked. Then he walked through the center aisle. People noticed. Whispers started immediately. Nathan noticed too, but kept smiling. "Ethan," he said into the microphone, voice warm with fake concern. "I'm glad you came." "No, you're not." The room tightened. Ethan stepped onto the stage. Security moved. So did Mark Ward, who stood from the front table with Emily beside him. That made Nathan blink. Just once. Ethan took the microphone. "I was told tonight is about saving children." Silence swallowed the room. "So let's talk about the one you stole." Nathan's smile finally cracked. Doyle, the sheriff, started forward, but Mark's lawyer lifted a folder and said, loud enough for the nearest cameras to catch, "Touch him and every file goes public before sunrise." Ethan nodded toward the screen behind the podium. The AV tech hesitated. Emily said, "Play it." The hidden camera video filled the ballroom wall. Claire's face appeared 12 feet tall. Her voice shook through the speakers. "You sold our baby." Gasps exploded across the room. Nathan turned white. People looked from the screen to the stage and back again, trying to hold both versions of the man in their heads, and failing. Then came the surveillance clip from St. Mary's. Nathan wheeling the bassinet through the staff exit. Then the ledgers. Then the payment trail. Then the photos Nathan had used to blackmail Claire. The room turned on him in real time. Donors stepped back. Board members stared. Somebody in the back yelled, "You sick bastard!" Nathan grabbed the mic stand, desperate now. "That's edited. This is grief-driven slander. Claire died because she was on her way to expose you," Ethan said, voice cutting through him. "And if the brakes on my car are tested tonight, they'll tell everyone what you did next." That was the final hit. Not because the room had proof yet, because Nathan's face reacted before his mouth could. A tiny, guilty flash. The cameras loved it. Sheriff Doyle moved again, this time toward Ethan, but state investigators were already there. Mark's lawyer had gone bigger than Ethan knew. They stepped from the side entrance with warrants in hand. Nathan backed up once, twice. Then he saw there was nowhere left to go. For the first time in his life, he looked small. "Ethan," he said quietly, almost like a child now. "I'm your brother." Ethan stared at him. "No," he said. "My brother died the night you put a price on my son." When they took Nathan away, he shouted Claire's name. Not in grief, in fear. As if even dead, she was the one who had beaten him. A week later, the break report confirmed tampering. Doyle resigned before he could be charged, which didn't save him from indictment. Dr. Brenner had already fled the state, but not far enough. And for the first time in 6 years, Claire's gravestone had the truth brought to it. Ethan stood there with fresh white roses in one hand and Jonah's small drawing in the other. A lopsided dinosaur with blue spikes that Jonah insisted Claire would have liked. The boy wasn't calling him Dad yet. That would come later. Or not. Love doesn't heal on command. But Jonah had met him. They sat on a park bench 3 days earlier feeding ducks, and Jonah had looked up and said, "Mom says you knew my tummy laugh before I was born." Ethan nearly broke in half. So he smiled and said, "Yeah, and I've missed it for a really long time." Jonah leaned against him after that, like children sometimes do when their heart understands safety before their mind understands history. At the cemetery, Ethan knelt by Claire's stone. "I was too late," he whispered. "But I got him." Wind moved through the trees. For once, it didn't feel empty. "I'll tell him everything good about you," Ethan said. "Not the fear, not the lie, just the fight. Just the way you loved him so much you walked into hell alone." He laid the drawing against the flowers. Then he stood, looked at the sky, and let himself feel the one thing grief had denied him for years. Not peace. Not yet. Something harder earned. Truth. And sometimes truth doesn't arrive like light. Sometimes it arrives soaked in rain, carrying blood, guilt, and the last words of the person who loved you most. But when it finally comes, it changes everything. Tell me honestly, if you were Ethan, could you ever forgive Claire for keeping that secret, even if she did it to save your life?